What if everything you've been told about attracting a woman is completely wrong? What if the more attention you give her, the less she values you? And what if the moment you stop chasing is the moment she starts thinking about you? It sounds cruel. It sounds manipulative. But it's neither. Because this isn't about playing games. It's about understanding a truth that most men learn far too late. People are naturally drawn to what they cannot control, cannot predict, and cannot easily possess. Every day, thousands of men exhaust themselves trying to impress, convince, and win a woman's attention, only to watch her slowly lose interest. Meanwhile, another man does less, says less, and somehow becomes impossible to forget. Why? What does he understand that others don't? Welcome to Magnetic Masculinity, where strong men learn what truly makes them unforgettable. In today's video, we're going to uncover the psychology behind attraction, attention, and masculine presence. Now, let's get started. Part 1. The more you chase, the more you disappear. One of the most painful truths a man can learn is that attention is not the same thing as attraction. Most men spend years believing the opposite. They think that if they text first every day, if they always make themselves available, if they constantly show interest and affection, a woman will naturally appreciate them more. At first, it seems logical. After all, that's how many men were raised. Be kind, be attentive, show her how much you care. And while there is nothing wrong with kindness, many men unknowingly cross a dangerous line. They stop being kind and start becoming available at all costs. The moment that happens, something changes. Slowly, almost invisibly, their world begins to revolve around her. They check their phone every few minutes. They overanalyze every message. A delayed reply ruins their mood. A short text keeps them awake at night. Without realizing it, they are no longer living their own lives. They are living in reaction to hers. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Nothing is less attractive than a man who abandons himself in pursuit of someone else's attention. Not because he is weak, not because he lacks value, but because he communicates something powerful without ever saying a word. He communicates need, and need creates pressure. Imagine meeting someone who constantly seeks reassurance from you, someone whose happiness depends on your approval. At first, you might feel important, but eventually you begin to feel responsible for their emotional state. And responsibility is not attraction. This is where many men lose themselves. They mistake devotion for desperation, interest for obsession, connection for dependency. The tragedy is that they often have good intentions. They genuinely care. They genuinely want a meaningful relationship. But their fear of losing her becomes greater than their respect for themselves. And when that happens, they start negotiating with their own standards. They say yes when they mean no. They tolerate disrespect. They ignore red flags. They become someone they barely recognize. Ironically, the very behavior they believe will bring her closer often pushes her away. Because attraction is not created when a man sacrifices himself. It is created when a man remains grounded in who he is. The man who is most difficult to forget is rarely the one who gives the most attention. He is the one who never abandons his purpose, his boundaries, or his self-respect for anyone. And that is where everything begins to change. Before we continue, I'd like to hear your perspective. Have you ever lost someone's interest because you cared too much or gave too much attention? Yes or no? Share your experience in the comments below. Your story might help someone else who is going through the same situation right now. Let's learn from each other's experiences and build a stronger community together. And if you're enjoying this video and finding value in these lessons, please consider subscribing to the channel. Your support helps Magnetic Masculinity continue creating deeper, more meaningful content for men who want to grow stronger, wiser, and more confident. Now let's continue. Part 2. The moment you stop making her the center of your world. There comes a moment in every man's life when he realizes something that changes the way he sees relationships forever. A woman should be an important part of your life, but she should never become your entire life. Unfortunately, many men don't learn this lesson until they have already suffered because of it. When they meet someone they truly like, They slowly begin to rearrange their world around her. Their hobbies become less important. Their goals become less urgent. Their friends hear from them less often. Their personal growth starts to slow down. Without noticing it, they begin to build their identity around the relationship instead of themselves. And that is where the problem begins. Because the strongest form of attraction has never been obsession. It has always been purpose. Think about the men who naturally command respect. The men people admire. The men who seem calm, grounded, and confident. What do they all have in common? It isn't money. It isn't looks. And it certainly isn't the amount of attention they give women. It's the fact that they have something meaningful pulling them forward. A mission, a vision, a purpose bigger than any single person. When a man wakes up every day focused on building something valuable, his career, his health, his business, his craft, his future, he carries a different energy. He doesn't cling, he doesn't chase, he doesn't panic when someone pulls away. Because his entire identity isn't tied to whether one person stays or leaves. And that independence is incredibly powerful. Not because women are attracted to neglect, but because people are attracted to emotional strength. The truth is, when you make someone the center of your world, they often feel the weight of that responsibility. But when they see that your life is already full of meaning, they begin to see you differently. You become a man with direction, a man with standards, a man who values his time. And time is one of the clearest indicators of self-respect. A man who values his time doesn't disappear for days to create mystery. He doesn't play mind games. He simply refuses to abandon his priorities. If he's working, he's working. If he's training, he's training. If he's focused on a goal, he stays focused. And that consistency creates something far more attractive than attention ever could. It creates respect. Many men believe attraction grows when they become more available. But often, attraction grows when a woman sees that your life doesn't stop moving just because she entered it. Because deep down, people trust strength. And one of the greatest signs of strength is having a purpose that remains steady regardless of who comes and goes. The irony is almost cruel. The less a man needs someone to complete him, the more attractive he often becomes. Not because he is trying to impress anyone, but because he has finally remembered that his life belongs to him. And when a man truly understands that, he becomes very difficult to replace. Part 3. Why what is always available is rarely valued. There is a psychological principle that quietly shapes almost every area of human behavior. People tend to value what feels scarce, not because scarcity automatically makes something better, but because scarcity forces people to pay attention. Think about it. We rarely appreciate something when we believe it will always be there. We assume we can return to it later. We assume it isn't going anywhere. And because of that assumption, we stop noticing its value. Relationships are often no different. One of the biggest mistakes a man can make is becoming so predictable, so available, and so eager that his presence begins to feel guaranteed. Not appreciated, guaranteed. At first, it seems harmless. He replies instantly every time. He cancels plans whenever she needs him. He rearranges his schedule to accommodate hers. He always says yes, always shows up, always waits, always stays. And over time, something subtle begins to happen. His attention loses its impact. Not because he has become less valuable, but because people naturally adapt to what becomes constant. This is a truth many men struggle to accept. The more available something becomes, the less conscious effort people make to appreciate it. This doesn't only apply to dating. It applies to opportunities, friendships, success, even freedom itself. Human beings often recognize value most clearly when there is a possibility of losing it. Now, this does not mean you should intentionally withdraw affection. It does not mean disappearing to create anxiety. And it certainly does not mean manipulating someone into chasing you. Those tactics may create temporary attention, but they never create genuine respect. The real lesson is much deeper. A strong man understands that his time, energy, focus, and presence are valuable resources. And valuable resources are not handed out without thought. He doesn't make himself scarce because he wants to appear important. He becomes selective because he understands that his life matters. He understands that every hour he gives away is an hour he can never get back. And that awareness changes how people perceive him. Because when a man treats his own time as valuable, others begin to do the same. Most men fear creating distance. They fear that if they aren't constantly present, someone else will take their place. But that fear often leads them to overinvest far too early. And overinvestment creates imbalance. One person starts chasing, the other starts receiving. One person becomes emotionally dependent, the other becomes emotionally comfortable. And attraction slowly begins to fade, not because anyone intended for it to happen, but because balance was lost. Healthy attraction requires space, not emotional distance, not coldness. Space. Space for curiosity, space for anticipation, space for each person to maintain their own identity. Because when there is no space, there is nothing left to discover. And mystery disappears. The truth is, the most attractive men are not the men who make women chase. They are the men who are fully engaged in their own lives. Men who are present when they're present, focused when they're focused, and absent when their priorities require it. There is no game being played, no strategy being forced. Just a man who refuses to sacrifice his purpose in exchange for constant validation. Ironically, that is exactly what makes people pay attention. Because confidence is attractive, but self-sufficiency is unforgettable. And when people realize they no longer have unlimited access to your attention, something interesting happens. For the first time, they begin to wonder about your attention too. And that is where attraction often begins to deepen. Part 4. The power of emotional control. If there is one trait that separates a boy from a man, it is this: the ability to control his emotions instead of being controlled by them. Most men think attraction is built through words. The right text, the perfect response, the clever joke, the flawless timing. But in reality, attraction is often shaped by something much deeper: your emotional stability. Because sooner or later, every relationship presents moments of uncertainty. A text goes unanswered. Plans suddenly change. Someone becomes distant. Energy shifts. And in those moments, a man's true character is revealed. Most people don't lose attraction because of a single mistake. They lose attraction because of how they react to uncertainty. A man who lacks emotional control immediately seeks reassurance. He double texts. He overexplains. He demands answers. He creates problems before problems even exist. His fear begins making decisions for him, and fear rarely leads to strength. The truth is, uncertainty is uncomfortable for everyone. No one enjoys feeling ignored. No one enjoys feeling unwanted. No one enjoys feeling replaced. But emotionally strong men understand something that emotionally reactive men do not. They understand that feelings are temporary, and temporary feelings should never dictate permanent actions. This is why some men appear calm under pressure. It is not because they don't care. It is because they refuse to surrender control to emotion. When a woman pulls back, they don't immediately panic. When a conversation slows down, they don't assume the worst. When life becomes unpredictable, they remain centered, because they know their value does not disappear simply because someone else's attention fluctuates. And that mindset is rare. In today's world, many people are addicted to instant validation. They want immediate replies, immediate reassurance, immediate certainty. But real confidence grows when a man learns to tolerate uncertainty without losing himself. Think about the men you've respected most in your life. The men who carried quiet authority, the men whose presence filled a room without them saying much. What made them different? It wasn't aggression. It wasn't arrogance. It wasn't dominance. It was composure. The ability to remain calm when others became emotional. The ability to think clearly when others reacted impulsively. The ability to stay grounded when circumstances became chaotic. That kind of control creates a powerful sense of security. Not only for the man himself, but for everyone around him. Because emotional stability communicates strength. It tells the world, I do not need to force outcomes. I do not need to chase certainty. I do not need to control everything to remain at peace. And there is something deeply attractive about that. People are naturally drawn to those who seem comfortable within themselves. People trust those who remain steady under pressure. And women often feel safest with men who can regulate their emotions rather than be ruled by them. The irony is that many men believe being emotional means expressing every feeling immediately. But maturity teaches a different lesson. Not every emotion deserves a reaction. Not every disappointment deserves a response. Not every moment of silence needs to be filled. Sometimes the strongest thing a man can do is nothing at all. To pause, to observe, to remain calm, to let time reveal what emotion cannot. Because when a man develops true emotional control, something remarkable happens. He stops chasing answers. He stops chasing validation. And eventually, he stops chasing people. Not because he no longer cares, but because he finally understands that his peace is worth protecting. And once a man reaches that level of self-control, he begins to radiate a quiet confidence that no amount of attention-seeking can ever replicate. That is the kind of confidence people remember. And more importantly, that is the kind of confidence people don't want to lose. Part 5. When you stop chasing, everything changes. At some point in life, every man arrives at a crossroads. On one path, he continues chasing. Chasing attention, chasing approval, chasing validation, chasing people who are unsure about him. On the other path, he makes a different choice. He turns that energy inward. He begins building himself instead. And that is where everything changes. The biggest misunderstanding about the phrase, ignore her and she'll chase you, is that most people focus on the wrong word. They focus on ignore. But the real secret is not ignoring her. The real secret is no longer abandoning yourself. Because the moment a man stops making his happiness dependent on someone else's attention, he becomes free. Free from anxiety, free from overthinking, free from the exhausting need to constantly prove his worth. And freedom has a strange effect on people. It changes the way you walk, the way you speak, the way you carry yourself. Others can sense it even if they cannot explain it. For years, many men believe attraction is something they must earn. They believe they need to be funnier, smarter, more impressive, more available, more accommodating. But eventually, life teaches a different lesson. The people who are most valued are often the people who value themselves first. Not in an arrogant way, not in a selfish way, but in a healthy way. They understand that self-respect is not negotiable. They understand that their time matters, their peace matters, their purpose matters. And because they know that, they stop giving those things away to anyone who has not earned them. Ironically, this is often the moment when people begin paying more attention. Not because the man is trying to create attraction, but because genuine confidence is impossible to fake. A man who is constantly seeking validation looks outward for his worth. A man who has found validation within himself carries a completely different presence. One feels needy, the other feels grounded. One asks, "Do you choose me?" The other quietly says, "I choose myself first." And that difference changes everything. Because the truth is, attraction may bring someone into your life, but self-respect determines who stays. The strongest men understand this. They don't need to win every person's attention. They don't need everyone to like them. They don't need to chase those who are already walking away. They simply continue moving forward, growing, building, becoming. And if someone chooses to walk beside them, that's wonderful. If not, they keep going anyway. That is real power. Not controlling others, not making someone chase you, but reaching a point where your happiness no longer depends on whether they do. So if there is one lesson to take from this entire video, let it be this. Stop chasing people. Start building yourself. Because the moment you become a man with purpose, standards, emotional control, and self-respect, you stop worrying about who is leaving and start attracting those who genuinely belong in your life. And in the end, that is what true masculine strength has always been about. Conclusion. As we come to the end of this video, remember this. The goal was never to make her chase you. The goal was to stop chasing anyone at the cost of losing yourself. Too many men spend years seeking validation from others, believing that attention is the same as love and approval is the same as respect. But real masculine strength begins the moment you reclaim your focus, your purpose, and your self-respect. The lesson is simple, but powerful. Build a life so meaningful that you no longer need constant reassurance from anyone. Focus on your goals, protect your peace, strengthen your character, and let your actions speak louder than your need for attention. When you become a man who values himself, everything changes. Not because others change, but because you do. If this video resonated with you, leave a comment below and share the biggest lesson you learned today. And if you want more deep insights on masculine confidence, self-respect, attraction, and personal growth, make sure to subscribe to Magnetic Masculinity and turn on notifications. Your support helps this channel continue creating content that empowers men to become stronger, wiser, and more grounded in today's world. Thank you for watching, and remember, the man who stops chasing the world often becomes the man the world starts noticing. Thank you for taking the time to watch until the end of the video. See you in the next videos.